Now, a guy yesterday came into my stream and he says, I want you to watch my video. And I said, okay, if you want me to watch your video, post it on Reddit and I will watch it if people upvote it. People did upvote it. Here's the video.
Hey everyone, welcome to my very first ever YouTube video. I'm wanting to give a perspective of how I see the current state of modern gaming as a casual gaming enthusiast. Just to introduce myself, I'm a married man with a full-time job. And I'm dedicated to a lot of various other commitments in my life. While gaming is definitely my favorite hobby, I don't always have the time to enjoy it. There are times when I'll go weeks without touching a game, and then there are stretches where I can squeeze in maybe a few hours every day. This is the reality for many of us, trying to balance work, life, and the hobby we love, gaming, as a regular...
I think that's one of the big issues that casual gamers have, is that a lot of times they can't play regularly every day. But a lot of games are built around like a daily reward structure. So like for a guy like this where, you know, like let's say Tuesdays he has to take his kids somewhere or whatever. So he has like just way less time. Like now he's basically systematically getting farther behind every single week because of the way that the daily rewards for the game are. It's called having a life. Well, what I'm saying is that so the way that the rewards in certain games are structured is that they're structured in a way to like front load the reward for logging on every day, right? There's like login rewards, you know, a daily like little battle pass bar that you fill up, something like that. And like, oh, your first mission of the day gets you 400% experience, something like this, right? And so I think for a lot of guys like this, they get put in this position and they're kind of stuck, right? Yeah, just don't play that shit. Exactly.
Everyday guy.
A lot of games are structured for people with no life. Well, it's more that not only are they structured with people structured for people with no life, they're structured for people that have a consistent schedule, because the games are designed around playing them regularly, but life isn't designed around playing video games regularly. So you have these massive problems. I think he brings up a good point.
Not one of those hardcore streamers or YouTubers who can dedicate countless hours year-round to gaming, but I do enjoy watching other content creators who live and breathe this stuff.
I'm glued to a chair!
That's not quite my reality though, and I know I'm not alone in this. So in this video, I want to represent the casual gamers out there, people like me who balance a love for gaming with everything else going on in their lives. I hope to give a balanced view on controversial perspectives, and also hope I could shed some light on what I think are very important topics that can impact the future of gaming. Alright, first things first, and this is the breaking point that finally pushed me to make this video. I want to dive into the current state of AAA gaming.
You were the chosen ones!
If you do a quick Google search, you'll find that AAA games are defined as high-budget, high-profile titles, typically produced and distributed by major, well-known publishers. But
I feel like it's kind of like this weird, like, bell curve now that I feel, where it's like, so this is like the quality, and this is the studio, where it's like indie, this is like indie, like super indie, this is like indie, this is AA, there's a lot of A's here. But like, I unironically think that the quality for games is like this. Am I crazy? It's almost like these like mid-level studios, I feel like, are able to produce a better game at a much higher ratio.
Me, as someone in my mid-20s,
it's like a standard
who
deviation,
grew up playing some truly incredible games from these big developers, AAA used to mean something more. It stood for trust, originality, and most importantly, innovation. I think back to 2007 when I went on a Christmas holiday with my family in South Africa. I very quickly discovered Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty Modern Warfare at a local games shop. I was completely hooked. It probably wasn't the best for me as I was 9 years old at the time, but I fell in love with these games. While most kids will want to spend their summer vacation outside having fun, all I wanted to do was stay inside and play these amazing titles on my dad's MacBook, which he had installed Windows on just so I could play. Those games weren't just entertainment, they were groundbreaking. From that point on, I had complete trust in AAA developers and publishers, and rightfully so. I'd even look
it's also that, like, you need to have that trust because those were the most expensive games. See, like, they kind of standardized everything by the time that, like, PS2, and especially by PS3, by the time that came out, pretty much all games were the same price. But back in the day, like N64 era and like Super Nintendo era, there was a massive, like, gradation of like what games cost. Like some games would be $20, other games would be like $70. So these AAA games were really expensive back then. And I think that's kind of how it was built up with this expectation. And even now, I think that's true. Like Helldivers 2 came out, it was $40. And if you want to buy the new Assassin's Creed, it's like 70 or 80 or 90 if you want to play it like 3 days early.
The Ubisoft, Activision, Sega, Blizzard, or EA logos on game covers or in magazines, knowing that they are a sign of quality. Yeah. Those logos were like a seal of approval, a way to gauge whether I was making a good decision when getting hyped for or even picking a game.
Well, that was the thing. Like, I mean, I was this way with Blizzard. Like, I had no interest in Overwatch. Like, Overwatch wasn't a kind of game I played. I was a WoW player. Like, the only FPS I had played before then was Modern Warfare 2, I guess Gears, it's technically third-person FPS, and Halo. And then I played PUBG after that. Like, what the fuck would I care about Overwatch for? But because it was made by Blizzard, I was like, oh, I bet this is going to be really good because Blizzard's really good. And that's the way it used to be. Same with Bungie is the same way. I like anybody who played the old games, like we already know this is the Bungie logo. Bungie used to be massive. It's huge.
Remember that feeling of seeing those logos pop up when loading a game?
Challenge everything.
Especially when it was blue.
That rush of excitement, knowing you were about to dive into one of the best gaming experiences of your life.
I felt that way. The last time I really felt that way was with Elden Ring. With Black Myth Wukong, like it was like such a wild card, right? You know, Chinese developer, pretty much unproven record with AAA games. What are you really expecting to get out of this? But with Elden Ring, like, bro, I sat down and I knew today was the day. You know? It was great.
But unfortunately, over the years, something has been happening, and it didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow, gradual change, like watching someone age or noticing yourself slowly gaining weight. It's happening right in front of us, but we don't fully grasp how much things have changed until one day we look in the mirror, or even at an old photo, and the difference is startling. Over the years, the trust, originality, and innovation that once defined AAA companies has been slowly fading.
I think one of the really big weaknesses of games now is that games are produced with such a big budget that they need to appeal to a broad enough target audience, a target audience that at least through simulation and through like a projection, like a financial projections, that they can make their money back on. So like logically, if you can make 200% of your money back, you would want to invest the most amount of money possible. And if you want to invest the most amount of money possible, you want to make the most money, you have to appeal to the most people. So what happens is that games become more and more complex, because one thing that I can really notice with old games is that many old games play like Space Marine 2, where it has a pretty narrow breadth of content. It's not like you can go and do everything. There isn't some big open world. There's a lobby and you can do that thing and that's it. And I think that Monster Hunter is kind of the same way in a different fashion. But I feel like most games are trying to become like your everything game. And they're doing that, I think, because they can't justify the budget that they're investing into this game unless the target audience can be projected to be everyone. So if you look back and you go back and play a lot of these old games, like I did this with Dragon's Dogma 1, the game really isn't that complex. There's not a lot to it, but what there is good.
Seeing logos from developers I used to admire now fills me with skepticism, even a strong urge to avoid their games. What I find surprising is how patient and forgiving gamers have been towards AAA companies for so long. A great example of this has been the Battlefield franchise, particularly with the launch of Battlefield 5 in November 2018.
Yep.
This is the first game in the franchise that was surrounded by quite a bit of controversy and received a lot of mixed and negative reactions.
What now? Dislikes? This trailer must have been a banger back then? Yeah, for sure.
Despite being part of a well-loved, long-standing series of games.
Yeah.
Although I am only talking about the Battlefield IP here, you'll probably notice similar patterns with other major AAA companies and their once revered franchises. Battlefield 5...
I mean, Diablo, like, I feel like Diablo has... I've been really surprised to see so few people excited about the expansion for Diablo. Like, it almost feels like it's not coming out. Am I the only person that's noticed that?
I've faced backlash after its reveal trailer, primarily due to the perceived historical inaccuracies. The inclusion of female soldiers in a World War II game led some fans to criticize the game as unrealistic, sparking debate over political correctness. DICE, the developer,
I think the problem is that you can't really have a
by standing firm.
You can't really have you can't have a historical game where it's like World War II and you have like women with like a claw hand beating up men fighting on the front lines. Anybody is going to watch that and they're going to think to themselves, the reason why this is happening is because of political correctness. Every normal person knows that's not what's happening. They know that it's completely unrealistic and it's silly. And so when you look at what you're seeing here, you know that you're not going to get an authentic experience. Nobody asked for that. It's ridiculous. It's a game. It's fantasy. Well, if it was fantasy, then why are they making things that aren't realistic, right? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's fantasy. Well, then why can't it just be all guys? Yeah, this is fiction. Also, like, this is it, and that's actually, yeah. What am I even saying that for? It's not fiction. Like, they're making this and they're basing this off of like something that happened in the past. Like, it's based off World War II. And also, like, it's just such an obvious... It's such obvious, just like, okay, yeah, we're going to put a woman in here for no reason. Anytime I see something like this, I automatically assume the game is going to be garbage. Because to these people, it matters more that the game represents some sort of ideology rather than the game is actually good or has any sort of, like, real gameplay. At a very, very face level, these people are more concerned with the aesthetics of the game and making this game look like it conforms to modern standards than making this game faithful to what it's trying to represent. It's a priority list. Yeah, exactly. It's immersion breaking. It is. It's massively immersion breaking.
On their creative choices, which only escalated the controversy. Further fueling the fire, a DICE executive famously responded to criticism with, if you don't like it, don't buy it.
Oh.
Does this remind you of anything? This alone caused a portion of the fan base to not buy into Battlefield 5.
Yeah, people listened. That's bad.
Including myself. The game's marketing was seen as completely unfocused. The reveal trailer with its chaotic and almost cartoonish tone confused fans about whether this game was a serious, historically themed World War II shooter. This lack of clear direction left many of us unsure of what to expect from Battlefield 5. Upon release, Battlefield 5 felt incomplete, missing key features such as the promised Firestorm Battle Royale mode and Tides of War live service content, which were
that's
delayed.
The big problem. They didn't have a Battle Royale. Is like this came out, like he said, 2018. In 2018, everything was about Battle Royales. They should have released with a BR mode. Like, this is, again, it's a studio that, it did? Did it have it on release? They patched it later on? Yeah, see that?
Other promised features like the combined arms co-op mode were also absent at launch, making the game feel quite bare bones compared to previous entries like Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4. When we finally got these features, they were apparently not worth the wait. Now this is what it is. And we've seen many glorious redemption stories from poor launches over the years. So I'll give it to DICE that Battlefield 5 is a decent enough game to play now.
Yeah, I've heard that this game has been improved, but the thing is that if people make up their mind that the game is bad, most people are not going to want to admit that they were wrong and come back and play the game afterwards. And I think that's what happens the most. Is that, like, as soon as the game comes out and people get a bad impression of it, then the game is permanently bad. I think that there's a lot of examples of this. I think that really you could use No Man's Sky. Think about how long it took them to rebuild that reputation. Cyberpunk 2077. And then also WoW. Like, for example, I think that Blizzard fixed a lot of the problems that alienated players in terms of, like, gearing and, like, systems. But a lot of people don't come back to the game because they had a bad experience with it and they just don't really feel like playing anymore. So I think that there's a lot of cases, like Lords of the Fallen is the same way. Apparently they made a bunch of changes to the game, and as far as I know, nobody even came back to try it out. So the problem is that if you come out with a game and then the release of the game is, like, very, very bad, it's very hard to get a second first impression from players.
Upon launch, it disappointed quite a lot of us. In summary, And in line with my topic, Battlefield 5's launch was plagued by controversy, miscommunication, missing features, and technical problems, leading to a mixed reception and pretty disappointing sales.
Yep.
Now, this can
No
happen.
surprise.
It can happen to any game, and there are some awesome redemption stories, like I said before. But there's not supposed to be a pattern. This is not supposed to happen to every single game on what was once a beloved IP from a company that is known for making incredible games in the past. If you're going downhill, if you are on track to death, survival instinct is supposed to kick in and you're supposed to turn around and go the other way.
You're supposed to.
Now, in line with what I've been talking about with Battlefield, I want you to think back and see if you can spot any of these trends with other IPs from AAA developers over the years.
I think it happens all the time. Happens constantly. And what ends up happening is that these games, they try to appeal to a broader and broader audience, and eventually they water down the experience of the game to where it appeals to nobody, including the original audience. I think this happens with a lot of games, is that they try to like standardize it and make it like completely appealing to everyone. Like WoW is the best example of this, right? Anthem, I don't know, I didn't play Anthem, but like Assassin's Creed in a nutshell. Yeah, and I think also the other issue is that a lot of people grade the quality of a game based off of how long they spend playing the game, which I think is a really bad metric. I think that you should grade the quality of a game based off of the time that you spend playing the game and if you enjoyed that time or not. Because there's a lot of games that I've put 15 hours into that I would recommend more than a game that I'd put 50 hours into.
Anthem by the one and only BioWare. The studio once celebrated for the very successful Mass Effect and Dragon Age franchises.
Oh yeah, they're coming out with a new one of those.
With very confusing marketing, a lack of in-game content, and pretty terrible technical issues that quickly drove players away. If I remember correctly, players didn't even come to it because of how bad the gameplay looked compared to the launch trailer or the gameplay trailer. Mass Effect Andromeda is another prime example of this. Plagued by terrible animations, off-putting character design, and a lackluster storyline that severely damaged the franchise's reputation. Then there's Assassin's Creed Unity, which was infamous for its buggy and nearly unplayable launch. As for Halo, and I don't really want to dive deep into this, but it saddens me how 343 Industries have mishandled the series through ego, greed, and short-sightedness. For me, one of the sad ones...
I don't think it's any of those things, ego or greed, personally. I do think it's ego to an extent. That's not true. But I think it's they just don't know how to make a good game. They don't know how to appeal. Like, the fact that Halo Infinite didn't launch with an official Battle Royale mode is unforgivable. It is... in my opinion, completely unforgivable. Like, BR is one of the most popular modes of playing games nowadays. That should have been one of your top priorities. I'm sorry. I know that a lot of Halo fans are like, oh, we don't like Battle Royales. The proof is look at the amount of people that are playing the games. Look at the popularity of these games. Battle Royales are huge. And you didn't even think to make one of these? It's insane. Think about that. It's crazy. I hate BR. It doesn't, like, I hate BR. I don't like BR. I don't care if you like BR or not. The truth is that it's an extremely popular fucking game mode, especially when Halo Infinite came out, and it should have released with one of them, and it would have kept more people talking and playing the game. Like, all you have to do is look at Modern Warfare and see what happened when they released Warzone. Warzone spiked the player base of Modern Warfare by like 1,000x. Like, the amount of people playing it, talking about it, it completely blew COD up. Like Warzone, in my opinion, Warzone, like, revitalized the entire COD franchise. They should have done this with Halo. And it is unforgivable that they didn't with Halo Infinite. I know that there's a lot of purists out there and people that don't like BRs, but it is undeniable that there are a lot of people that do, and it was stupid not to release the game without one.
This was the decline of Bethesda with Fallout 76, which released in a very broken and unfinished state. It was missing NPCs, had constant bugs, and very poor performance. It left us fans quite frustrated with how Bethesda handled such a beloved series. Even after AAA companies have tarnished their reputations with so many once beloved IPs, we as casual gamers still find ourselves getting hyped over their new announcements. Well, at least many of us did until recently.
Perhaps you should have let go also.
I vividly remember...
It's crazy how much money they put onto that. It really is. Wow. Concord? Yeah, I know. It's sad. Man.
After watching the Battlefield 2042 trailer in 2021, I told my friend that this Battlefield is it. This is where DICE and EA will redeem themselves. They have to. Despite the numerous missteps and disappointments I experienced between Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042, myself and a lot of gamers still maintained our patience and trust, believing that a AAA company, DICE, would finally deliver, that AAA companies could still be trusted. Unfortunately, the game...
I think that a lot of AAA companies can be trusted. I think that it's really just like a half dozen really bad ones that create this entire negative perception. Because when you really look at all of these studios together, you have like, I think you've got Larian that now I would say probably is a AAA studio from Software. I think Nintendo, a lot of like mainline Nintendo titles are effectively AAA games, and those are really good. Like, let me think, Capcom, AAA studio, Rockstar, Hoyoverse, if you like gacha games, they are the best. CD Projekt Red, yeah. Like, there are a lot of really good AAA game developers, but I feel like everybody focuses on like the Ubisoft, Blizzard, EA. I feel like those are probably the big three that are like the ones that a lot of people complain about. There are good AAA games that come out. It's just that when there's a bad one, I think there's a lot more focus on it because of how heavy the marketing for it is. Square Enix? Well, Square Enix hits and misses, right? It depends, right? I mean, for their big games, I feel like they almost always hit. But they also release a lot of like kind of secondary games that are, you know, usually not great.
Well, short. My friend and I ended up refunding Battlefield 2042 within just 10 minutes of playing it.
Wow.
I'm focusing on Battlefield mainly because it has been my go-to franchise in the past. I loved it. I was an OG Battlefield 2 player. I was unfortunately too young when Battlefield 1942 came out, but I thoroughly enjoyed the Battlefield 2 experience. Bad Company 1 and 2 were absolute gems, introducing the destruction mechanic that truly set Battlefield apart from other FPS games. I remember growing up in South Africa at Battlefield 3, which I played on 27 to 28 FPS. I think I clocked over 900 hours playing like that on my old PC. I love that game so much.
I mean, to be fair, back then that was normal.
I'm sure many of you who are old enough can relate to this experience with other beloved franchises. Maybe you were a die-hard Halo fan, or you couldn't wait to see what Ubisoft would deliver after the experience of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, only to find disappointment year after year. The state of the majority...
I feel like that's the way I've felt with a lot of studios. And like now, I try not to get like really invested or like emotional about whether a game is going to be good or bad. I just try to hope that it's good, and if it's not good, I just move on, right? I play something else. And also, like, I feel like there's so many games that are always being released that there's no reason to tie yourself down to, like, one individual game franchise and, like, invest everything into doing that unless you really want to do that. Because that's what I did with WoW, and it was a pretty unhealthy relationship. I think that there's some people, like, I see them, and it's like they're still kind of in that cycle. And it's true with like WoW, like League. I think there's a few other ones that are like that too.
Of AAA gaming is devastating.
Yeah,
there are only a few exceptions, companies that seem to still have their fans' best interests at heart. Even among these, cracks and doubts remain. Rockstar Games and From Software are notable exceptions, but today I want to focus on what I grew up defending, admiring and loving. Ubisoft. I used to brag to my friends about how much I loved Ubisoft and their games, urging them to join me in this passion. But now I find myself checking the news and stock prices to see if they finally pulled the plug on their live support. The second
funny thing about that is that there's actually a post here. Let me see if I can find it. I saw this today. Ubisoft is, quote, reviewing all of its strategic options for its future. Oh, that always yeah. That sounds really good. Reviewing its strategic options for the future. To
this place where I want to see Ubisoft crumble and go bankrupt. They've made me feel stupid for supporting them, treating casual gamers like we're not in the know somehow, or we live under a rock. Usually someone like me...
I also, you know what? I think he's right about that. That's really true. Like, they treat casual gamers as if they're stupid. Like, they release something, all the hardcore gamers fucking hate it, and they're like, that's okay, we've got a bunch of morons that are these dumb dads that are gonna buy the game, and we're gonna be fine, guys, don't worry. It's nuts. Whenever you think about it, they don't respect their time, yes.
Just a casual gamer doesn't pick up on the behind-the-scenes politics of game companies. I'm just living my life, playing whatever games I think look cool and enjoyable. But locking me out of gaming content at launch with superficial pricing.
I do think this is so true. I absolutely think this does turn off casual players. Because like a lot of casual gamers, you've got to think about this, you know, like let's use a little bit of logic, right? If you're a casual gamer and you're a gamer dad, the odds are if you've got kids and a wife, like you're budgeting money, right? I mean, like money is a factor for you. So you're thinking about money and you see this is $109 for some bullshit, and that's going to immediately not appeal to you. Just on a base level. And it's not like this isn't some kind of like, you know, super hardcore gamer take. You know, you pull up this screen and it's like $129. What the fuck? And you won't have that much time to justify the price. Exactly.
Throwing innovation out the window, flooding your YouTube promotional videos with obvious bot comments and likes.
If you look at, to be fair, every single positive comment, they are within 4.9 to 5.1 thousand likes.
This was a good day.
And every single one of them is being made by an individual with a first name, last name, number combination.
This has been the final straw for me. It's disheartening to watch a company that once felt like a
I don't know for a fact that was Ubisoft. And I find it to be shocking if it was. However, coincidence and personal interest, when they usually converge, are not a coincidence. But I would never say they did it. There's not enough evidence for that.
Of creativity and passion turned into what seems like a cash grab machine. Remember when Ubisoft used to take risks, crafting immersive worlds filled with depth and rich storytelling? Games like Prince of Persia and Splinter Cell felt innovative, and they challenged the norms of gaming. Now it feels like they're just recycling formulas, relying on the same IPs or brands year after year.
That's one of the things that like really kind of burns me out of some types of games, is that they have the same formula. Like, it's one of the reasons why I didn't really stick around and play Zenless Zone Zero, is that I had already played the gacha game formula a lot with, like, Honkai Star Rail and then with Wuthering Waves. So whenever I saw Zenless Zone Zero basically have the same formula, I'm like, okay, well, I know what I have to do. I know what I can, you know, what I can and can't do. Like, it's just, I feel the same way about WoW. Like, I know what the formula for WoW seasons are. And it's like, I think the difference is that I wish there were more games that allowed you to play at your own pace. Because I think this is a big issue, and I think this is also a big problem with casual players too, is that casual players, they think that like these games think that they're helping by giving casual players these daily and weekly rewards if they don't have time to play. But I think that for a lot of them, all it does is create another chore in their life that, by the nature of them being casual players, generally does not prioritize gaming. So what ends up happening is that they get so focused on like trying to, you know, like log on every day, they burn themselves out. And I think that games that allow you to just kind of play at your own pace, like Elden Ring or Black Myth Wukong or Core Keeper or something like that, without having a bunch of like reward structures and things like that, I think those games are actually better for casual players than the games that have these artificial catch-up mechanisms. Because what I think FOMO does, and I've said this many times, FOMO acts as a barrier. FOMO keeps people in the game, but it also keeps people out of the game. Because I don't want to go in and play a game. Like, this is me with Destiny 2. I would love to go play Destiny 2, but because of the game being out for so long and it seemingly is so complex, I'm not going to play that game until they bring out Destiny 3. And there's a lot of games like that. And so I think that really, like, if you look at it from a casual player's perspective, and this is a problem that a lot of fan bases have, is that fan bases take for granted a lot of things that are knowledge that they've earned by playing the game a lot. But the truth is that, like, most people like me, for example, like playing Final Fantasy XIV is the best example of this. How many of you guys, the hardest thing I ever did in Final Fantasy XIV was buy the game? That to me was harder than any boss. Like Alexander Savage min item, like, you know, like min item level, like no echo or whatever the fuck. That was nothing compared to being able to buy the game. It was awful. Yeah, exactly. And so like, that's really what I think holds a lot of players back. And I think that giving people the ability to progress at their own pace is really important, because like what he said, you know, some days you're not going to have any time. Some days you have 3 hours. So whenever you have like such a big discrepancy there, on the days that he has no time, he's not able to log in and get the rewards. On the days that he has a lot of time, he feels like the first 10 minutes are great, and then the rest of the time is kind of wasted because the game is balanced around that. It's just so many, like, I just wish games would get out of this, like, Skinner box, like, you know, continuous, like, you have to log on every day thing. It's very exhausting.
Try to squeeze more and more money out of their fans. And it's not just the content that's lacking, it's the connection. I remember the excitement of discovering new worlds and characters that felt alive and engaging. But now it seems like the focus is solely on monetization strategies, season passes, microtransactions, and limited time events that prioritize profit over player experience.
Well, this is a big issue too. Like, absolutely. And also the big problem is that when you have a game that has microtransactions in it, they fundamentally change the DNA of the game. Because at the point where you have reward structures that are built in the game, and then you have microtransactions that are designed to bypass or multiply those reward structures, what ends up happening is that the game is now based around you spending that money. And that's the way it is with a lot of games. Like, imagine how much more fun gacha games would be if you had $100 to spend every single day. Like, just theoretically. And it was like, it was just credited onto your account. That would be way more fun, right? And you'd be able to, like, actually do progress and, like, you know, like, actually play the game out. But it's not designed that way. And I think that a perfect example of this is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink functions in a lot of ways like a gacha game, except for you can just progress on your own and do everything by yourself, and there's no money involved. And you can see the difference there. And I want to say that a lot of these games, they're bad because of the monetization. The monetization makes them bad.
Of gaming has been overshadowed by this relentless push for profit. Now,
it's like they're not going to add in the really cool armor sets and video in the game if they can put it in the store. Because now the store armor sets, they want them to be more exciting and more interesting, because that's how you make more money. It's like just basic logic. Do people want to buy something that looks cool, or do they want to buy something that looks like everything else?
For profit. Now, I know this is being said all over YouTube. I've come across videos of this before, but I am coming to you as a casual gamer. A lot of us are only discovering this in the last few months. Some of us maybe the last few years. Some of us even today on this video.
And I think also this shift towards live service is also really demanding, and it's draining on casual players like him. Because like each live service game demands a certain amount of attention. And whenever you have to put that attention into the game, it can become very draining. Like, how many of you guys have played a live service game that's felt like a job?
Covering these things. The thing that I find crazy is with the grace that we show these companies, we still tend to trust their trailers and their adverts. You guys have promised...
Every gamer boycott is only 1 3-minute cinematic away from being over. Yep.
So much.
That's
through
right.
Your gameplay trailers, your cinematic trailers, all of that has just not been there. I think the first case of this, where I truly experienced it, was the first trailer that came out for The Division. I remember looking at this, thinking this is truly a next-gen experience.
Yeah, people were really excited about this.
I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be great. And then actually watching gameplay footage after it. And what I find strange is over the
crazy how it could just get worse.
We're so used to this as gamers. We have normalized this. We expect it. We watch a gameplay trailer and we're like, okay, I know it's going to be worse on launch, but it is what it is. We just accept it. After all of this, for quite a while, I believe that Ubisoft had the potential to return to its roots, to listen to us fans and reignite that spark of creativity. The thing that drove this thought was, don't they want to make money? Are they not tired of losing money? But apparently their idea of making money is very different. Everyone is trying to be the new Fortnite with their battle passes, with their DLCs, with their paid for content, their add-ons.
And like, you think about a battle pass, like look at this armor set, for example. This armor set is fucking awesome. This looks really, really cool. And in an old video game, this would have been obtained from beating the game on the hardest difficulty. But it seems like you just buy it with money now. That's it.
Especially on single-player games, which makes no flippin' sense. So I used to believe this. I definitely don't believe this anymore. I don't believe that there's actually a way for Ubisoft to come back. A wise, bold man once said,
I believe you cannot reason a person out of a position that they did not reason themselves into.
In this case, the person is a large AAA company. Greed, ego, and toxic positivity that permeates their messaging doesn't stem from reason. They come from a disconnection with the very players who once supported them. It's frustrating to see how these companies prioritize profits over passion. The decisions being made seem driven by a boardroom mentality rather than a genuine love for gaming. When the focus shifts to...
I think it's much more broad. It's that as the company grows in scope and scale, it involves people that are not endemically involved with its with the industry. And so you have somebody who's like a CFO that's coming from like Kellogg's, and now he's working at Ubisoft. Well, he doesn't understand all the nuances of video games in a lot of cases. So you have massive disconnects, and you have people that get brought in out of industry that don't understand, like, really kind of like what the secret sauce is for making a game. Like, they don't understand it with the same type of nuance that somebody who, you know, built something like this from the ground up would understand it. And I think that as studios get bigger, that becomes more and more true. And I think that recently there was like some CEO of like Sears or something like that comes and he's like, now he's, you know, a decision maker at a video game company. Like, maybe that's going to work out. Maybe it's not. But if you had to ask me, like, do I think it will or not? I'd say it won't. Time to gatekeep more? Well, no, it's not gatekeeping, really. It's about it's about the studios and the companies trying to bring in outside talent that don't have an understanding of the actual like creation process. They only understand it. They understand it as a theoretical, where they look at like numbers or a flowchart, but they don't really like understand it fundamentally.
Maximizing shareholder value instead of crafting meaningful experiences, the heart of what makes gaming special gets lost. But despite these frustrations with the AAA landscape, I'm actually quite grateful for indie developers and smaller game studios. This year, in my opinion, has been one of the best years for gaming that I've experienced in a long time.
I completely agree, and I'm really glad that he said this. I think that if you're the kind of person that only plays AAA games, like basically, if you get all of your games off of cable news television commercials, you probably hate video games more than anybody else. But if you are a more invested gamer and you pay attention to smaller indie titles, you're playing things that, you know, friends recommend you, etc., I think you're going to have a great experience, and I think gaming is better now than it ever has been. And I think the reason why isn't because there's like so many like super amazing like Elden Ring quality games. It's more that you have so many options, and there are all these little studios that are creating experiences. Like Dredge was very popular. I never got a chance to play it. I watched a little bit of gameplay, but this was like one of the top indie games last year. I work at John Deere. They brought in a marketing director who sold welding glass and supplies at a large chain. The dude spent 3 to 4 years here and still could not sell a tractor accessories to anyone. He couldn't name one fucking thing about most of the add-ons. He knew gas, though. Exactly. And that's what happens, is as a studio gets big enough that they try to like hire people to like operate it on like a theoretical level, and then they lose sight of what the actual like creation process is. I think that's what happens.
Time in years, I actually find myself with multiple games on my Steam account.
Here's another example of that is FaZe. Remember, FaZe had that problem. Then FaZe Banks bought out the company again, and then he went back and he took it back to doing what it does best, which is creating content for teenage guys, and FaZe is fucking killing it. It's because it was taken over by a bunch of corporate suits that had no understanding of what the actual product they were trying to sell was.
that I really want to dive into, but I just don't have the time to play them all. Titles like Black Myth Wukong, Helldivers 2, Pal World, Enshrouded, Once Human, Space Marine 2. I say that, but I actually finished the campaign because I enjoyed it so much. I think I finished it within 2 days, which is a lot for me. That's good for me. All these games really have captured my attention this year. They are innovative and original. Some of them not original, but they take what we've loved in the past and they've expanded on it with innovation.
Hades 2 is a great example of that. I mean, in a lot of ways, I kind of like the gameplay of Hades 1 more, but I didn't play enough of Hades 2 to really say that with like any sort of certainty. And I think Elden Ring, like a lot of what is in Elden Ring isn't really new, but it's just done very, very well.
Passion with obvious zeal for their gaming. Take Pal World, for example. Everyone loves Pokemon. People enjoy it. I never really got into it myself, but hearing the stories, watching the YouTube videos, everyone
It's actually crazy to look at how fucking garbage Pokemon... This looks so bad. This looks like it came out of a GameCube game. This is insane.
Waiting for
like
a Pokemon game like Pal World. For me, Pal World scratches an itch that a lot of people have been dying to scratch for many years. And this is why Pal World has been successful.
Yes.
Why have you not made a game like this, Nintendo? Who knows?
I bet you $1 million that there's a bunch of guys at Nintendo that are like, see, I told you they'd want a game like this. Why aren't we doing this? See, oh, they did it. But, oh, I was wrong for saying we should do this? Well, look at that. Look how many copies they sold. I told you guys. Absolutely, they're thinking that. 100%. They're not stupid.
You don't like money, apparently. There's other games that I am also looking forward to playing, which I just don't have time for, like Deadlock, or even the DLC for Elden Ring. These games, plus many more, remind me of the creativity and passion that still exist in the gaming world.
I think that also, like, if you talk about Deadlock, one of the reasons why I haven't really played a lot of Deadlock is that it's a competitive game, and I feel like the skill cap for competitive games go up so fast that it's not as fulfilling for a casual player to play one anymore, because there's so many of these, like, nuances and, like, esports, like, focused designs that make the game, like, highly technical and, like, hard to play. And the good people get so good that it's like with Fortnite, right? Like, I mean, how many of you guys, like, loved Fortnite on release? And then, or like in 2018, I don't think it was really released then, but like, you know, whenever it first came out. But then when people started like power building and like fucking turbo building or whatever, like you pretty much were like, okay, this is too much, and you stopped playing. That was me. You know, it's like I build like a wall and then I build a ramp and then I'm like, okay, all right, let's go. And the guy next to me has built a mansion and he's shooting a rocket at me. Yeah, they built a hotel. Exactly.
My excitement and hope for what is to come, but not from AAA games, AAA companies,
basically
or AAA
all I
IPs.
suck now.
In an ideal world,
well, it is that basically you suck now, but that is true. It's basically like I don't want to play the game because I'm going to suck at the game. But the problem is that being able to get good at a game now requires such a massive time commitment that unless you're maining that game, it's really hard to stay cutting edge with it. It's a competitive game.
We will see the death of Ubisoft, of other big AAA companies eventually.
That's true.
And with this death, I hope that they are able to sell their IPs to other companies that are passionate about gaming. I would love to see Star Wars or Assassin's Creed in the hands of a company that cares about the fans. I think I'm going to end this video here. I'm planning on doing a part 2 of this, so do subscribe if you're interested in that. But yes, otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
I'm going to be honest, if this guy had 100,000 subscribers, I'd say that he deserved more, and he has 232. So I'm going to link you guys the video. This was such a great video. This is made by a guy, he must be one of my viewers, right? He mentioned a few things I said in the thing, and he asked me to watch it, and I definitely feel like it was a good idea to watch it. It was a great video, right? I really liked it a lot. And so, yeah, it was a great video. Absolutely, part 2. Oh, yeah, no, I'll watch part 2 at some point as well. They're smart viewers. Yeah, I think so, too. There is a part 2. I'll watch part 2. Like, I want to cover some other stuff today, and we'll probably watch part 2 tomorrow, because I think that one's really, really good. Like, I think the editing was good. Like, there wasn't anything... One big component for me is, like, there's nothing obnoxious that made me want to turn the video off. A lot of people... this is especially true with, like, transitions. is that they try to like have like these like beats where it like keeps your attention. And to me, it's like when I see that, it's like, oh my god, I'm like, now I'm being overstimulated, you know? I'll be right back. Or it's just loud and annoying.